Hey, and welcome back to my channel, Kryptonite, Detecting, Repelling, and Thriving. This episode is really to focus on arguing with the narcissist. And I call it arguing with the narcissist, making nonsense out of your common sense. One thing that I've experienced in my life as a child and as an adult is that I was raised to get used to nonsense conversations, in the sense that I was raised to accept lies. That's the basic fundamental truth of the matter. And that means that as an adult, you find yourself in situations which other people might think, well, it's obvious that person is actually stalling or lying or manipulating the situation, but it takes you a little bit of time to figure that out. And sometimes the smartest people can over-intellectualize a reason for not coming to closure with an individual. And I'm totally allergic to lies now. And if I feel that I am being misled, I will put a stop to the situation quite quickly. And I'm becoming quite adept to that because of my studies around narcissistic abuse, narcissistic personality disorder, complex post-traumatic stress disorder. Basically, it comes down to this: narcissists survive off a facade of self. There is no core. There are various reasons for that. There's various reasons why an individual can grow up into adulthood and have no sense of who they are. They basically shift and change depending on their environment, situation, or their need at that moment, which is usually to survive shame and humiliation, which is something they obviously have had to deal with as a young person, as a child. And as an adult, their coping mechanism is to delay that, repel that, avoid that. And lies are the fastest, quickest means to do that. And if you're very skilled at it, most people won't be able to realize. And those who do are usually very solid individuals with a very solid sense of self and life experience of different personalities. So they're aware that there are patterns of behavior, and even if somebody comes across grounded, that doesn't guarantee that they would notice a person with NPD or be aware. But in general, if you are in a healthy place psychologically, you can see BS a mile away. But if you are overly compliant, overly loving, overly caring, overly codependent, you may only accept that facade as reality. One, because you don't imagine people could be that devious and to create such a false sense of self. And two, because you're used to that as a child. It's just so twisted. So, arguing with a narcissist is arguing with somebody who has no central core. So you end up in a situation where the rules change at any moment. In fact, you don't realize you're in a game until you're way deep in it. It's an argument with somebody who doesn't really want to resolve it and thrives off the energy that you emit because you are confused and distressed, and sometimes defensive, sometimes apologetic, because you want to find a solution and a compromise. But this individual does not want a solution and a compromise because they thrive off the dramatic aspect of the conversation and controlling and manipulating the person through lies and deceit and secrecy. They feel a sense of, from what I understand, they feel a sense of happiness, power, delight in lying and getting away with it. And the more people that accept their lies, the more pleasure they gain. It's quite twisted. So, you may enter a disagreement with a simple point, such as you're in a relationship and you need the washing just is never done. Simple thing like that, domestic task. And you mention it to your partner, and they go into a rage. And they start accusing you of things and say, "What, you don't do this, or you don't do that." In fact, last week, and you might find yourself in a conversation for 10, 15 minutes, even an hour. I'm sure there's been longer conversations than that. I'm sure you guys would be able to tell us about that. And you never actually deal with what you had at the beginning. What you had said was, "I just need help with washing up. I don't want to do it every day." And at the beginning of the relationship, they seemed quite accommodating to your ways, but suddenly it's an issue. You've put a boundary down and it's an issue. And the conversation will be what I call loop-de-loo, round in circles, never ending. The only thing that happens is you expend a lot of energy, find yourself totally distressed, confused, and upset. And what happens is, if this person continues to do that, you'll eventually stop mentioning the things that upset you, that hurt you, that you may need, which could be the simplest thing or the hugest thing to do with your emotions. And this individual will never take accountability for anything, will never admit fault, will have issues with apologizing. It's you find yourself more in a power situation than a dialogue. You find that you're not in a team. It's more you're living with somebody who is in a competition with you, but it's a very silent competition. It hasn't got any words, but you feel it. Arguing with the narcissist, when you think you're being logical, it'll be flipped to the point where there's nonsense that you're discussing. You might find yourself joining the nonsense of the discussion, led down the garden path. One, because you do want to solve it, so you actually take every situation that they bring up and try and defend yourself, justify it, make sense of it, try and understand why it's been brought up in the first place. And some people with narcissistic personality disorder, I think, use what is kind of like a shock and awe technique. It's to say something so horrible and so out of the blue and so unrelated that you have to stop talking to try and make sense of why have we left the park. The discussion is taking place in a park in the sense of that's what we're talking about, and now we have shifted to Mars. And sometimes this shock and awe technique could be so degrading. In fact, in terms of abuse, you could be called something so horrible. You've never heard this person use this language before. And they throw it out there, and it shocks you to the point where you freeze. And you can't continue to defend yourself or to try and actually prove or disprove what you wanted to say in the first place. It's a similar thing that child molesters would do. It's a similar technique to do something so out of the ordinary when you expect this person to be a wonderful person or a kind person, however they've lured this young person, and basically destroy you through an act that you never wanted to participate in the first place. And now you find yourself carrying the shame of it because they took you to that level. A lot of, I think, Narc Survivor mentions that in some of his work, the fact that they use the same grooming technique The same pattern of slowly breaking down a person, first luring them with positive energy, positive stories, positive environment, and then doing something really outlandish and negative in the direction of what they desire, which is sex for the predator. And for the narcissist who uses emotional manipulation, they can use emotional blackmail on you. You find yourself looped into something that you didn't even desire in the first place. And that can come out through discussions and through so-called arguments, where you're arguing at a level that you really never expected before. And in defending yourself from this attack, you end up being the person who looks crazy, especially when it's out of context. For example, out in public and nobody knows the story behind you too, and you flip, and the result is everybody else thinks, wow, this person is loop-de-loo, lost the plot. So, it also has to do with power, you see. You could feel at one point at the beginning of a relationship at the same level with this individual, but by the use of this looped, never-ending, aggressive, passive-aggressive argument style that the narcissist enjoys and is really good at, you can actually end up losing yourself, your sense of self, your morals. Who are you at some point? You start to question that. And I refer back to Narc Survivor because I'm a huge fan of his work. I believe that he mentions that he was almost nudged into suicide. And I think that is really well put. The abuse is so subtle and so insidious and can cover long periods of time to the point where the individual is nudged into suicide. And that can happen over text message, that can happen over voicemail message. That does not require the individual to be in the same room to persuade somebody that there is no need for them to exist anymore. And in fact, that's the only way to get rid of their pain. That the pain is so much that you want to put a full stop on it. And the psychological abuse can be so tremendous that an individual can be driven to that point. So avoid arguments with people who don't have the same intentions and don't have the same plan in terms of resolution and accountability and compromise, and even accepting maybe you just disagree. Maybe you have different points of view. If you meet somebody who just can't accept that, I would suggest stepping away 100% and avoiding this person at all costs, and finding people who will be able to have discussions with you, will be able to hear a no from you and accept it. I just think we need to share this more. And I want to end with something that happened to me yesterday when I talked to a friend of mine about everything and what's going on in my life right now with my family and issues. And she said, I want to know more about this narcissistic abuse, because she felt like it's important that more people can understand it. So I'll end with the Toni Morrison quote that I eventually found. If you're going to hold someone down, you're going to have to hold on by the other end of the chain. You are confined by your own repression. I think that's really beautiful. I really think that's beautiful. I wanted to see if there's another quote. I'll be better prepared next time. Still learning. Share, subscribe, ring the bell. I'd love to have some more subscribers. And that's it for today. Thanks. Bye.